Good evening. It is 6 o'clock, and it is time for the Beavercreek City Planning Commission meeting. And with that, we'll call it to order and then take the roll call.
Mr. Fountain?
Here.
Mr. Francis is absent. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Self is absent. Mr. Meyer?
Here. And with that, can I have a motion to excuse Mr. Francis and Mr. Self?
Motion to excuse Mr. Francis and Mr. Self.
Second it.
And we'll just do that by general consensus. Okay.
Good.
And then approval of the agenda. Staff, any corrections? Nope, we're good. But I think we want to remove.
Yeah, motion to remove the reorganization and put that on the April Planning Commission meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second
on
that.
And we'll just do that by general consensus as well.
Agreed.
Okay. And then the approval of the January 15th, 2025 minute meetings.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from the 15 January Planning and Development Commission meeting.
Second.
And we'll do that by general consensus.
Agreed.
All right. And with that, we're at our first public hearing. PUD 25-2, Valvoline. Sorry, let me take a second and thank Drew, Mr. Drew Ayers, for serving on the Planning Commission. His term was up. Thank you for his service, and welcome our newest member, Mr. Fountain. So,
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
and with that, we'll go to our first public hearing.
It's case number PUD 25-2 on an application filed by McBride Dale Claren, 5721 Dragon Way, Suite 300, Cincinnati, Ohio 45227. The application requests approval to rezone 0.65 acres from B2 Community Business District to a CPUD Commercial Planned Unit Development. The property is located at 3913 Colonel Glenn Highway, further described as Book 1, Page 9, Parcel 45 on the Greene County Property Tax Act.
And our public hearings work is first we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll have a presentation from staff, and then we'll hear from the public. So, with that, the applicant.
Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Woker, 5721 Dragon Way, Suite 300, Cincinnati, Ohio 45227. I'm with McBride Dale Claren. And I do have some slides. Don't think I did anything to... Okay. Yes, so I have a brief presentation. I know that the request was read into the record. I'm here on behalf of Commercial Site Acquisitions, which is also Casto Development, and they have a contract to purchase 0.5 acres at 3913 Colonel Glenn Highway. I have representatives from Casto as well as with Valvoline Instant Oil Change with me tonight if you have questions for them. We do have frontage on both Colonel Glenn Highway and on Germany Lane. This property is just west of Zinc Lane. The property, as you see on the slide, is Zone B2. We are requesting a zone change to commercial PUD, CPUD, which would allow for the Valvoline Instant Oil Change, which would also be a minor automotive repair facility. This is the property. You can see we've highlighted that. Colonel Glenn Highway is to the north, and Germany Lane is to the south. This is an existing beverage drive-through and a vehicle storage lot. So that's the current use. We're proposing to have a two-bay Valvoline Instant Oil Change facility. You can see our concept plan that we've submitted. We'll have 6 stacking spaces. We'll also have 9 parking spaces. We're proposing a driveway on both of our street frontages. You can see from this plan and compared to the last plan that we are improving the green space substantially on this project. This is a building elevation. I know we're at the preliminary stage, but we think this is a quality building. We believe that it meets your architectural standards for this. We also submitted some pretty detailed analysis about stacking for this project and provided detailed information about our user and from the Valvoline team. And so, we look forward to working with the staff on that. But we're confident that we have a plan that works. And so we're asking the Planning Commission to recommend approval for this. We believe this allows redevelopment of underutilized property. We did submit detailed information about our plans. We have reviewed the staff report, have no objection to the conditions recommended, including the restrictions on future use. So we're in a position to support that staff recommendation. And so we would request your approval for this application. I look forward to answering questions and then working with staff on a final plan at some point.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
With that, we'll hear from staff.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, we are here for the Valvoline rezoning here, PUD 25-2. Just rehashing what was already previously said, but it's the lot's 0.65 acres. They're hoping to put a Valvoline instant oil change on that. At its current state, how it's zoned B2, that would not be permitted, which is why they are pursuing this zoning change here. We're kind of in the first prong of this this lawn process here. So this is the rezoning stage. Basically what we're going to go over tonight is just the specific uses and the conditions, kind of the concept plan and the architectural features. While great to see early in this stage here are not applicable here this evening, those can be subject to change as we jump into that site plan stage in the phase 2 of this. Just giving your bearings here, we are on that southern star to the south, and this is kind of in our northwest pocket of the city here, indicated by that star to the north there. Once again, that's the visual of the lot. We're confident that this Valvoline site will be a significant upgrade to the area as far as visually, given what's currently there. So this is just our zoning map indicating that it is zoned B2. And just going through this again, we're changing from the request is changing from B2 community business to a CPUD. The reason why we didn't pursue just a strict B4 is it gives staff a little more leverage as far as making the site how we want compared to what the standards in the B4 zoning district. And also this site is relatively unique too, and would create some unneeded challenges with a straight B4 zoning. With the CUPUD, we are mirroring a lot of the uses in B4 zoning. Randy and I did go through them and decide to exclude about 32 various uses. You can see that in your attachments in the staff report, but those are indicated through a red strike through, just indicating that we wish that those would not be permitted uses in the future if this Valvoline site were not to go forward. So using our land use plan guiding future development, what this falls under is a regional commercial office. Some key characteristics of that land use plan include providing a full range and variety of all aspects of commercial activity. It's oriented around major department stores. It's typically have a market area spanning multiple county metropolitan regions and offers a broad spectrum of shopping goods and services. Staff believes that a vehicle repair station aligns well with the intended purposes of this area. It's located near the mall at Fairfield Commons and Wright-Patt Air Force Base to have kind of that multi-spanning markets as well as orientation near some major areas to get some use. And it's required service for all vehicles, so staff is confident that it'd be a well-utilized ability of the property. Once again, this is just strictly conceptual, but as Jonathan pointed out, this is the site plan. Nothing's changed from his to mine, so that's just a conceptual look of what you might expect to see if this were to move forward. And then just a reminder on city's role in development. We don't have the ability to stop development outright, and we I guess for this project specifically, we think this is a much needed upgrade for the area and is a welcome change. Therefore, we're recommending approval, subject to the 6 conditions in the resolution. Happy to answer any questions, and obviously the applicant has a full team here that can help answer questions as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, we'll turn to our public hearing. So we ask that when you come up, please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes, and if you would like, you can borrow up to an additional 6 minutes from 2 people. They would need to come up and state their address and name for the record. So with that, do we have anybody who would like to speak on this case? No? Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Melissa, did we have any written input?
No, we did not.
Okay. And with that, we'll turn to my fellow commissioners. Jacob, any questions?
I have a
Any questions?
Colin, can you come back up and go back to the site plan that, similar to you and what Mr. Walker said? So this is just for the zoning.
Correct.
And they will come back for the site plan, correct?
Yes,
So we will see
and that site
again.
plan could completely change by the time the next meeting happens.
Okay.
So.
So just given the traffic on Colonel Glenn, I would think when they come back for the site plan, that will be something normally looked at, such as ingress, egress off of Colonel Glenn, traffic congestion, access to all 4 sides of the building. That would be normally in a site plan process.
Exactly. Yeah, we would determine, especially on that Colonel Glenn, if it is deserving of full access or if it should be limited in any capacity. That would be determined at the site plan stage.
And then the usage of the product there, waste disposal, that's also a site plan issue as opposed to a zoning consideration for the land.
Could you expand on the use of the property, or
No, the use of the contents that will be dispersed at the property, waste, oil, and others, would that be handled separately as an impact on the site or as just an impact of disposal for the city, something a site plan might want to note?
I think that could
Just my own
be
clarification.
considered. The disposal could be considered in the overall approval since that's the intended use. That's obviously a significant portion of
Good.
that. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
Colin, I'll just jump in there. So I think, are you meaning about like what happens with used oil and stuff like that? They would have to meet like all the,
Right,
state
just the
regulations and all
review
that,
of can the
but-
volume of used oil and other waste storage be considered an impact on the land during rezoning for a CPUD, or is it something that's totally set up for the site plan review and traditional waste storage methods?
So that would be the site plan. Yep.
Got it. Thank you, Colin.
I'm sure conditions will be set forth when the specific site plan rolls around for
Absolutely. Yep.
environmental considerations.
So a few questions for you. So typically when we see a lot like this where the right-of-way extends into the road, the city will normally take the right-of-way back. So at what point does that happen? Do we need a condition here? Is
That's
the
a good
city
question.
looking to do that here?
Nick, did you? That would be site plan.
Site plan. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then, not to be too nitpicky, but
Yeah.
so of the items that you excluded, there was like 2 that stuck out to me. Like maybe we should exclude them.
Okay.
I don't know how important that is.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So like
No.
bowling alleys was one. Like that doesn't seem to fit on the site, like space wise.
Sure.
And then the other was recreation facilities and the customary accessory buildings and gymnasiums. Those both seemed to fit your definition of like too big, right, for
Sure.
the site.
Yeah.
So
I don't
just curious what staff's opinion
don't
on
think
excluding those was.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll let Brandy
and if-
speak to that.
Yes, good evening. Yeah, we look at, and a lot of times we do look at if it's a extremely large use like auditoriums or convention centers or something like that when it comes to size. With a bowling alley, we were thinking to keep that open in case the property to the east decides they want to rezone and join this PUD, or the property to the west does, and the same thing with the physical fitness center.
Okay, that's fair.
If they can't fit it, they're not going to put one on
Yeah,
there
yeah.
anyways.
Okay, that's fair.
And so that's why we just kind of try to keep it open as much as possible.
Okay, all right, thank you. Second helping. Any questions? All right. With that, I will need a motion.
Motion to recommend approval for this PUD zoning change.
25-2 with the
25-2
six
for Valvoline,
conditions.
with the six attached conditions.
Very good. I second.
And with that, Melissa, can you take the roll, please?
Mr. Jones,
Approval.
Mr. Fountain,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes. And with that, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case, PC 25-2. Melissa, can you please read the case?
This is case number PC 25-2, conditional use, on an application filed by Kevin Halton, 3500 Salem Avenue, Dayton, Ohio, 45406. The applicant requests conditional use approval to allow a vehicle sales and service, new and used, located at 4017 Colonel Glenn Highway. The property is further described as Book 1, Page 2, Parcel 52, on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant here?
He's not, he's out, he's not doing well, he has to leave town.
No worries. I'll just handle the presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Colin Carville, City Planner again. Once again, we are asking for a conditional use. The applicant is asking for conditional use for K&H Motors for the purpose of selling new and used vehicles at the site at 4017 Colonel Glenn Highway. The part of their definition for vehicle sales and service also includes service. And the applicant won't be conducting any body or repair work there, so I wanted to kind of clear that up from the start, from the definition. So this would strictly be limited to the sales and service of vehicles, or sorry, just the sales of vehicles. Getting our bearings once again, we're still in that northwest corner of the city, right off Colonel Glenn there. It's at the busy intersection of Colonel Glenn and Grange Hall, indicated by that north star. Once again, we are on that southern star there on your screen. The existing conditions of the property, so this is a very unique and challenging property. Like I said, there's only one ingress-egress on this very busy Colonel Glenn Highway. The site itself is very small. There's a building there that's 550 square feet. The entire lot itself is 0.42 acres, so relatively small. 8,350 square feet of impervious surface is available for vehicle display and customer use. It was previously utilized as a vehicle sales place, and the reason why we're here this evening is because they were dormant for over a year of inactivity, so they were required to come back here if they wanted to operate again. How they plan to utilize the property, it'll be between 20 and 25 cars will be for sale at any given time. The business averages 7 customers a day, so very low traffic volume there. And hours will be Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Staff is recommending in our conditions that 4 spaces be clearly delineated for customers and employees. In the past, when that space was utilized, it was a little chaotic there. So we thought that clearly designating some spaces would give it a more professional and a more orderly look to the site. Due to the low traffic numbers, that's how we came up with that 4 parking spaces. We are recommending approval on this. I have attached 6 conditions in the resolution. I think the main reason why we are recommending approval is staff can't really envision that site being utilized really as anything else other than a used car site. We worked for months on possibly developing that as a Take 5 oil change, and just given the proximity to the intersection, only having one ingress-egress, I believe the county or some other jurisdiction has ownership of the Grange Hall Road, and they would limit another access point on that. So given the existing conditions, we really only foresee this being utilized as a used car lot, new car lot, and we thought that we would rather have it being utilized than sitting vacant. So that's why we're recommending approval here. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And once again, we'll have a public hearing for this case. If there's anyone here who would like to speak to this case. No? And with that, we'll close the public hearing. Melissa, was there any written input?
No.
Okay. With that, Jake?
Yeah, question for staff. Was K&H Motors the owner occupier prior to the year's pause?
No, this would be a new tenant.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few things, Colin.
Yeah.
The site, I drive by there a lot to and from the base.
Sure.
And it seems like the site's already operating. There's a half a dozen or so good vehicles there, and which makes me think this, per the zoning code that asks for this certificate of use compliance, will that in any way during the interim from should this be approved today to when it would be issued, should something happen, would that put the city in jeopardy because it's already appearing to operate, even though it hasn't been granted the conditional use yet, or are things happening pretty quick? Or maybe explain, does it not appear in use, and I just misread having been there over the weekend to
You're
see
totally
it?
fine. So if approved this evening, the use would go into effect. So there wouldn't be any kind of delay as far as
Week or
like
2 week or 3 week.
exactly.
Okay.
I will say we were made aware they were operating. I don't know when that started. There was a little confusion with last month. We were unable to meet. They were on the agenda for last month. So I think it might have been lost in the shuffle there. But we were made aware that we reached out to them and cautioned them that operating might affect their status here this evening. But obviously we couldn't shut that down. So.
But there's nothing with this situation existing that puts us, the city, in any kind of jeopardy should something have happened that we don't know of yet or could happen?
No, the
Okay.
conditional use, I can't imagine any sort of liability would fall to the city if they were operating without that. There's potential they could get violations of code, violations for doing a conditional use that they didn't have permission to do at the time, but it sounds like that was a timing issue, and I do recall that we had to cancel last month, so that may be part
Okay.
of the reason this happened.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, sir.
I don't have any questions. Thank you. With that, do we have a motion?
Motion to recommend approval for PC 25-2 with the, how many?
6.
With the 6 conditions attached to the resolution.
Second.
With that, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Fountain,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes. And with that, the motion passes. Let's see. Our next case is a decision item, so there will be no public hearing on this case as we held the public hearing in January. You don't, yep. So staff presentation, please.
You know how to? Yeah, absolutely. So you just this is just go forward and then go back. Awesome. Yep.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Brian Hosel. I'm the Land Acquisition Manager with Miranda Homes. I'll apologize in advance to Mr. Jones and Meyer. A lot of this will be repeated, but for Mr. Fountain's sake, we'll kind of run through some of this again.
That's special, I love it, all right.
Special treatment, yeah.
Sucking up to the commission. Yeah.
So for those not familiar, Miranda Homes is a residential home builder. We're based out of Pennsylvania. We're a family-owned company with an office here in Westchester, and that covers the greater Cincinnati area, so Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and Dayton. Our current closest communities are Springboro, that are currently active, so our Springboro, Liberty Township, and Lebanon. And then coming this summer, currently under development, we have sites in Huber Heights and Troy. So definitely expanding into the Dayton region. all of these single-family detached communities. This is the site right here. Like our previous two addenda items, in the northwest corner of the city. There are two stub streets that feed into the site that we'll be connecting to. The one that will, I think, be the main access point is Graham Drive, which connects to Grange Hall Road. Site itself is about 25 acres. So this is the site plan here. A couple things to note. On the northern boundary, which boundary is I'll go back real quick. Northern boundary, which boundary is a residential community. The eastern boundary borders a residential community. We have a 50-foot buffer on the top where no lots are, going to be in that area. It's going to be open space maintained by the HOA. The eastern boundary, which really only one lot borders, that's a 58-foot separation, and then a large open space on the southeast corner. Most of the site is wooded, so we will leave trees in those areas as much as possible, so there'll actually be a natural vegetation buffer between those existing homes and the homes that will be constructed here. Another thing to note on the site is we're leaving connection points to the west and to the south. Colin will speak to it a bit more after me, but the comprehensive plan does have residential for this area. Finally, a thing of note, the blue areas are stormwater management. It often comes up, when you put pavement and houses on this, what happens to the stormwater? All that has to be maintained on the site. So any drainage conditions which might be on the site currently will only get better with this development, because as opposed to the water just going where it wants to go, it has to be managed in a way that doesn't affect the neighbors and also doesn't affect the houses that we are building. Finally, the kind of odd-looking lot there on the bottom right is a existing cell tower. I've been in touch with that company about providing better access to that cell tower, and honestly giving them better access and better visibility, and also doing that in a way that doesn't affect the homes too much. So the due diligence process we go through, just so everybody understands what happens after this, we will provide access to the cell phone tower, as I stated. We've been in touch with both Greene County about connecting to the gravity sewer system, and connecting to the water system as well. I touched on stormwater management. The final thing that often comes up is traffic impact. So if it is required, we will do a traffic impact study. I'm not sure if it'll be required on this site. That is not something that's decided at the zoning phase. But one thing to note is we will be building both 1- and 2-story homes here. They tend to generate traffic at different times. 2-story often being families where they're leaving, because they're coming and going during school hours, and 1-story being often adults without kids. They are likely avoiding those times. So having 2 product types actually tends to spread that traffic out, and minimize the impact. So the plans that we would plan to offer on the site, so the top 3 are ranch plans, starting at just under 1,500 square feet and going up to over 2,000 square feet. And then on 2-story homes, starting at basically 1,900 square feet and going up to over 2,800 square feet for the Carlisle, which is actually the home shown in that picture. We would potentially add other plans to this site, but it would all be in that same square footage range. And one thing to note, architecturally on the outside of the homes, all homes would have cement fiberboard siding, no vinyl siding. Interior, just to kind of give you a picture of the type of home we build, since not everybody is familiar with us in this market. We do 9-foot ceiling standard on the first floor on all of our homes that would be built here. 42-inch tall cabinets, granite and quartz countertops, along with the rest of the list right there. Basically what I'm getting at is these are not basic starter homes for most people. These are first-time move-up, second-time move-up homes for folks who maybe have a growing family or a smaller home in Beavercreek and want to move up, or for the ranch buyers, somebody who has a large 2-story, wants to downsize to 1-story living, but still wants all those nice amenities that they're used to. I did a quick price comparison, so I grabbed all the sales in those neighboring communities to the north and to the east in the last 2 years. So our site is in the teal, and then the site to the north in the red, the community to the north. The average sale price was $265, roughly in that community, and to the east was $226. We would expect our average sale price to be between $450 and $500. So These will be nice homes, but not priced to the point where they're not going to fit into the community. These aren't going to be, super large estate lots. They'll fit in with the price point to some degree in the area. These are an example of some of the ranch homes that we'll build. Again, from roughly 1,500 square feet to 2,000 square feet. All our homes come standard with a 2-car garage. Our homes aren't custom, but they're semi-custom, so there's different elevations people can choose. They can choose where they want brick, where they want stone. They can do a 3rd-car garage. They can put a sunroom on the back. And then interior, everything is, again, not customizable, but there's hundreds of options in every home that they can choose from. And these are the 2-story homes that we would offer, again, from roughly 1,800 square feet up to close to 3,000 square feet. And these are the same homes that we're building in our communities in Liberty Township, in Springboro, and then in Lebanon as well. Are there any questions for me?
I think we'll have a staff, and then we'll have questions for you probably. So thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Colin Carville, City Planner. We are here for the Thoman rezoning, PUD 25-1. Once again, the applicant is requesting approval to rezone 25.195 acres of land from A1 and R1A to RPUD to allow for the development of 55 single-family homes. Once again, similar to our first case this evening, we are in the first stage of the, overall project. So we were at the first, reading here for the rezoning. A lot of what was discussed takes place at the site plan stage. We're specifically talking about the specific uses that this property can be used for, as well as the densities required. As mentioned previously at the start of the meeting, this is not a public hearing, so we won't have input here from residents. I do want to say for the residents here this evening for this case, regardless of how this is voted on, we're targeting a March 24th meeting on Monday. It'll be at the same council chambers here at 6 p.m. And you will be allowed to speak at that hearing. We're going over the same material that we are here this evening. Nope, that will be that. So you'll be making a recommendation here this evening regarding the zoning, and then City Council will have their opportunity to hear the zoning case, which again will be on that March 24th tentatively City Council meeting. Once again, this is a little bit southwest of where we were working previously, but you can indicate by that star there, that northern star is where we'll be here this evening. And a lot of this we've worked through over. I do want to talk about the VPA number 19 once again. This comes from our land use plan, which indicates that less than 3 dwelling units per acre for a density. The land use plan states that any large residential development must include and be contingent on improvements on the Kemp Road to the south there. Because we are working in that northeast corner of this VPA, staff didn't feel like that was necessary. It's 25.195 acres of the total 175. So we didn't think that warranted improvements on Kemp Road at this time. Here's another look at the preliminary site plan here. Once again, that can be subject to change. The one thing that did change from that January 15th meeting to this meeting is the density did slightly increase. Now that the applicant was not adding any more units, they were simply allocating a little more acreage towards the existing cell tower, which is why that number jumped up from, I believe, 2.19 to 2.25. So that's kind of why that density increased. But once again, that was not for for I guess number of homes' sake. That was just allocating potentially more land to that cell tower agreement. That does fall well within the 3 dwelling units acre maximum, and as I previously mentioned at the meeting, that kind of falls in line with a lot of the developments that we're doing these days. Bridalwood, which was a new development, kind of sat at 2.5 density, and then Turner, kind of to the south part of our city, was sitting at 2.1. So this kind of falls in between those two, in a happy median there. This is a look at our zoning map. So that blue indicates that this is a mixed use zoning. Essentially, the entire parcel is agriculture. In that northeast corner there, it called for residential R1A, but the vast majority of that mixed use was agriculture. And once again, we are requesting the change from the A1 agriculture to the R1A to a RPUD. What realistically can be in those would be single-family homes, places of religious assembly, nurseries, daycares, and assisted living. Obviously, from our applicant's presentation, they seemed intent on doing single-family homes at this location. So part of the lots here, there's breaking this down. This is what is decided at this stage. We are requesting 60-foot lot width minimums. That's pretty standard with most of our modern PUDs here, our residential PUDs. We are requiring that 50-foot buffer to the north that our applicant already spoke on, because it does border that R1A. You can see that it's also 50 to the east there as well. The setbacks for this PUD will be 30-foot minimum front yard, 35 minimum rear yard, and 5-foot minimum on each side. No principal structures shall be closer than 15 feet of each other. Principal structures meaning the homes themselves. Once again, that's all pretty standard with most modern residential PUDs. Stormwater will be calculated at the site plan stage, but I just wanted to do a slide here and wanted to make the kind of general overarching comment that existing stormwater conditions will not and cannot be made worse with new developments. One, we have a great engineering team that ensures that doesn't happen, but it's also part of our code as well that conditions cannot be made worse from new development. So, and that's indicated in that code snapshot there. I did want to add another slide regarding the lift station. I know that was brought up a couple times at the previous Planning Commission meeting. So there was a new lift station that was put on this parcel and paid for by the surrounding residents. Once again, this will be an issue that will be addressed at the site plan stage, but I did want to make clear that if the lift station were to be needed to be moved, that cost would be incurred by the developer. That would not be imposed on the surrounding neighborhoods again, as it previously would. So, but that will be hashed out at the site plan stage with conditions and the like. So, just wanted to make a quick slide on that. That it will be addressed. We're not ignoring that issue. It will just be addressed at a later time. And once again, we've seen this slide before, but I just want to remind our audience that our role in development is to make sure that land develops orderly. The only way we can stop development is if the city were to purchase land, and that's utilizing taxpayer dollars. So when we're faced with projects like this, we're just trying our best to make sure that it's being developed in the best way possible and in the best interest of the city. We can't tell them not to develop anything on there. So I just wanted to make that clear because we are recommending, once again, approval of this agenda item, subject to the 9 conditions in the attached resolution that you all have.
Thank you. I'll start to my left this time with any questions.
I do have some relative to Colin's special slide and lift station. Randy, could you come up? Let me address this to you, and I don't want to steal anything from my fellow commissioner on the VAP 19, but on the lift station, so I'm looking at your condition 7, which I totally agree with, and this is going to be a very small area of the VAP 19 that'll be developed, the upper right-hand corner. And the concern, since I was here on the 15th, but in the audience, and heard a number of people resolving around Wayview and Graham access, I'm thinking now for your condition 7, which does talk about correctly that it's subject to our final review and approval at the site plan stage. So this is definitely a site plan issue, as Colin pointed out. But since it's put in condition 7, I'm thinking of a need to possibly tweak condition 7. And that goes to the fact that the lift station should Wayview be subject to desirability for ingress egress per the applicant, and Graham is the only other way in and out of the site existing. Would we want to tweak now, as opposed to the site plan review, tweak number 7 to say, and I'll read it out loud: approval at the specific site plan stage, including special attention to impacts of ingress and egress to the site by the lift station possible relocation. Would that be something to go for the zoning of that small parcel now without inhibiting anything to the applicant for how they would develop that land? But it would show to the residents who were here on the 15th of January that we're sensitive to Bayview and Graham and the impact of ingress and egress that lift station is going to really impact if not handled properly. So would we put that in 7?
Yeah,
Would
I
that
mean,
be
that
appropriate?
That can certainly be added into a condition, or just even something simple like, you know, the, any requirements for moving of the lift station will be handled at the specific site plan stage, or we can use the same language. I try to keep it
I was
as
trying to use general language because, as you correctly point out, at the site plan stage, they get into the specifics of ingress and egress.
Yeah, we know more about
even
the
though they
grading
kind
and
of went ahead of the game now in the zoning application. But the lift station is so significant of an impact on Bayview, and Graham is the only other access road at the moment for that small parcel. Without being specific and boxing the applicant in, I'm trying to find something that acknowledges the impact of the lift station without boxing in any potential ways of looking at ingress and egress.
Sure.
So that's why I came up with the phrase that you would say specific to the site plan stage, including special attention to the impact of the lift station on ingress and egress to the site.
that'll work.
As showing reflection that as best as we can do at this early stage to Bayview and Graham and the residents that live along it.
That would be certainly something you
So
guys
that
can
would be
add.
a
And
motion I would make.
from a procedural standpoint, you would make a motion to amend
Correct.
the resolution. You guys would vote on that, and then you would vote on the resolution.
Correct. But otherwise, it's a tremendous opportunity for that little small corner. But I just feel that the lift station and the ingress egress is
Yeah, and
something
and
could be addressed.
there's no doubt that when we get to the site plan stage, we're going to require a secondary access point on Bayview. So
Got
they're not going to have only one singular access on Garden View because, or not, Bayview
Bayview,
and
yeah.
then Graham into Garden View. Because those are two separate neighborhoods that aren't connected right now, and this is our opportunity to connect them and give each of the neighborhoods additional way out of their neighborhood. And that's the intent. So that's very imperative that we that connect all that.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, a few questions. So it all ties back to, is the thoroughfare adequate enough to support the existing neighborhood and the potential new development here? At what point, and I was looking at the land use plan for VPA 19, and it says should connect to Kemp Road. At what point, if there's 55 homes going in here, at what point would connection to Kemp Road be required?
Well, you can see there's a large parcel to the west, and really, it's hard to say hypothetical too much. It would depend on if and when something happens there, what that would be, what comes forward. To get all the way down to Kemp is a big task, and this small corner is geographically separated from Kemp by a good distance, in the order of 1,000 feet or more. And so it didn't make sense to require it at this time. The impacts on Kemp would be minimal. With the two neighborhoods that this neighborhood proposed to connect to are on Grange Hall Road. And just want to point out, the specific site plan stage is where we would require a traffic study. And this project being located in the impact fee district, any improvements that are required if the study says Grange Hall needs to have this or that, any requirements would have to be paid for by the city using that impact fee fund. They have to pay into it, but the city would be obligated to do the improvements using match with that fund. That's how we set it up in 1993 when the impact fee district was set up.
Okay. So tying back into the traffic study, and again, I know this is a little bit down the road with the specific site plan, but the applicant mentioned 1 versus 2 story homes. When the city does traffic studies, is that they're not taking into account number of bedrooms, number of levels in a house. It's just looking at how many homes are in an area.
Honestly, we're going to we'll require them to use a third party to do the study itself, and then we'll review it when it comes in. And I've seen studies that do account for, especially multifamily, where they account. There's a big difference if you have 20 3-bedroom apartments versus 20 1-bedroom apartments. The traffic would be different, and so they will come up with a formula based on projected number of single-story versus 2-story homes. But it's hard to really do too much on that because you don't know how many. There's no requirement that 50% be 1-story and 50% be 2-story. That wouldn't make sense to have that sort of requirement. So they'll probably show a range based on projected versus worst case scenario kind of thing.
So my last question is a little bit more administrative, but on the charts, and I guess on our packets too, it says action requested approval, and then on here it says action requested approval. Is there a way we can say recommending approval? Because I think that'll help people in the audience with the understanding that we are a recommending body to recommend approval, disapproval to city council for them to make their decision.
Sure. No, yeah, and that's a good point. Just a clarification, and we kind of over the years get comfortable just saying recommend approval.
Yep.
What it is we presented you with a draft resolution in your packet. And the resolution says that you guys, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the plans to City Council. And so what we're recommending approval is that you approve the resolution. But the resolution ultimately is just a recommendation to City Council. So I know I kind of talked in circles there a minute, but
You're recommending approval of the recommendation resolution.
Right. I know that's kind of a funny way, but we're just suggesting you guys recommend approval of the plan to City Council.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are all my questions.
And I don't have any questions. So.
So I'd like to make a motion to amend Resolution 7. Melissa, that I thought you wrote that down. Let me just give it to you as simple as I can. So the existing Resolution 7 would come to a period, and then it would be a sentence added after that period of resolution saying, also, special attention will be given to resolving any possible impacts to Bayview and Graham ingress and egress by the Greene County lift station that exists at the end of Bayview, period. I'm trying to keep it general and yet at the same time show relevancy, especially with what one of the residents brought up back at the January meeting.
So you're adding that on to
Yes, that would be a new sentence at the end of the existing without changing the existing.
Okay. With that, do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay. And we'll take a vote on that.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. So with that, the motion to approve or to modify the condition is approved.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then we need a motion to approve the PUD 25-1 with the modified conditions, 8 conditions.
So I make a motion to approve PUD 25-1 with modified condition number 7.
Second that.
I think it would be with all of the conditions,
with all
not
of-
just
Oh,
the modified
yeah.
condition.
Thank you, Josh. I make a motion to approve PUD 25-1, Tomlin rezoning with all 9 conditions with 7 modification.
Second that.
All right, and we'll take the roll on that.
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. And with that, the motion passes 3-0. And we are on to our next case, PUD 06-1, mod 225. Do we have a applicant on this one? Okay, sure. We'll hear from staff.
All right, good evening, everyone. PUD 061 is requesting a minor mod, 225 we're indicating it as, to the Project Kona. The request overview, the adjustment, they're requesting an adjustment to the site layout of a previously approved 2-story office building, which totaled 44,000 square feet. All the architectural features and dimensions of the building will remain the same. Once again, we were just kind of changing a couple changes to the overall layout here, and we'll jump into that. Once again, we're working here in the northwest part of our city, and I want to just jumping back here for history. So, City Council approved this at our November 25th meeting. They approved the overall project at the setbacks at the time. And everything involved in that process. We're back here this evening because after, I believe, the future tenant had some requested changes, and we're here to kind of accommodate those, accommodate that request. So what's changing here this evening? The setbacks primarily. So for the east setback, we're changing it from 85 feet and 85.43 feet to 21 feet to the east. To the west, we'll be changing 75 feet, 0.72 feet to 146.56 feet. To the north, it's basically getting 10 feet south from Colonel Glen, changing from 84 feet to 94 feet. And the south will still maintain over a 100-foot setback there. Staff has no concerns with those building placement, the building placement that's proposed here. Here's a look of how that site will sit, and you'll notice from this site plan a couple other changes that we'll jump into in the next slide. We're just losing one parking space here. They required a minimum of 147 off-street parking spaces, so they're still above that, which we're happy with. And they are losing kind of the other major change. They are only having one access point now off of East Side Drive. Previous plans included access from Colonel Glen Drive. Those were eliminated. That was the applicant's request, but after looking at it, I think staff was in agreement that that would just, with the traffic off Colonel Glen, that might just create some nightmares there. So we were happy with just a primary access off East Side Drive to allow full access there with a stoplight just to the north at that intersection there. So we thought that was another positive change in this proposal. Stormwater management is relatively the same. It's a little more to the southwest. It'll still be that wet retention pond. We'll still require, as you can see in our conditions, we're mirroring a lot of basically everything that was previously approved at that council meeting in November. But we'll require kind of that aeration system to prevent algae from accumulating. And once again, our city engineering department must sign off on all those stormwater calcs prior to us issuing that zoning permit. So we have full faith in them that those calculations will be up to standard for this project development. So based on what was requested here this evening, staff is recommending approval. We just attached five conditions, the main one being that it's mirroring mostly everything that was approved at that November council meeting. So, any questions?
Yeah, we'll just open it up.
Okay, I've got one question for you, Colin, and then I want Nick, if you could come up, because they're going to reflect the condition 5, which is the stormwater. But the first is, since I wasn't here when it was approved by
Sure.
city council, we're basically just approving a relocation to more to the upper right-hand corner of the site. We're not really, there's no more site plan review or anything like that, correct?
That is correct.
It's
Tim.
just
Yep.
movement.
Yep.
So if that's the case, Nick, can I ask you a couple questions, the city engineer? So recommendation number 5 talks about all stormwater calculations and detention retention plans shall be approved by the engineering department prior to the release of the zoning permit. So can I assume now on March 5th that these are to be approved, or are we going with what was approved subject to the November council meeting?
No,
And it's
these-
already a done deal?
Sure, yeah, no, these will be to be approved. They have, I think Mike had Anderson from their design consultant, they had submitted them the redone calculations, excuse me, with their submittal that they had in February. So those are being reviewed right now. That was one thing that was missing that we just got in the last couple of weeks, so we are reviewing those
Okay,
as
good,
well.
good.
So,
So since it's 2B, you don't probably have this handy, but they gave it to us. This is the engineering drawings. And there's notes on the engineering drawings that have raised to me a stormwater issue.
okay,
So it should be pretty simple to
Sure.
answer. One of the notes, it's on Plan C8, general note number 23. It says, by whoever wrote the general notes, there is a potential for high groundwater at this site. The contractor is responsible for designing and implementing a plan to control both surface and groundwater during the course of construction, which, as you know, is already underway because they've already cleared all the trees in the area. But since there's a potential for high water and we're moving the hardscape to the upper right-hand corner, I'm assuming then part of this approval will be a re-looking at the capacity of the storm drain in the lower left-hand corner to see if it's adequate to handle the relocation of the hardscape, subject to wherever that high water table could be, as opposed to just accepting it because it was okay before, and it's going to be okay now because it was okay before, which wouldn't fit to me. If someone put a note on the plan, it should be something that should be re-looked at, the adequacy of that pond in the lower left-hand corner. Is that the case, or is that something?
yes, that is something that we will look at with those calcs that came in. And sometimes when we do get in, I will say too, so bottom line, yes, that will be looked at when those calcs come in for that as part of the drainage areas that drain to it, and the type is part of the soil. The soil composition is part of that drainage calculation and detention calculation that we look at
Okay.
for those potential items that
Okay,
might happen.
because
Yeah.
you don't show it on the site, but it's shown now in the lower left-hand corner, even more lower left than that is an existing retention area from another development that will be impacted should that be inadequate. And I didn't want this site approval or whatever impacting the surrounding area unnecessarily because they just moved the building and moved the hardscape. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that kind of clarity. There's one other note that's on the C1, so it's the first page, and it basically says, the exterior construction activity shall be during the hours of 8 and 10. Now, there's no residential around it at all, it's heavy commercial. But given the base traffic in that area, and as well as from Northrop Grumman right next door, is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. too much time for inhibiting the traffic from the base and to and from to where we might want to comment on different, at this stage of the zoning process, different ways of handling the construction to work around the base traffic. Not necessarily make the hours longer or shorter, but just to be more accommodating to that heavy base traffic intersection at, from 6 to 8 and 9 in the morning and from 3 to 5 in the afternoon.
Sure, yeah, if that's a condition that you feel that we need to add to that, we can have a note, we could modify that note to have something like all lanes, like in particular, we have this a lot with the road construction, all lanes on all lanes on Colonel Glenn shall be open from this time to this time.
Yeah, I
So-
don't want to burden it unnecessarily, but
Right.
with our familiarity with the impact of the base, does that allow so many hours for construction, which would be great to get it done sooner,
Right.
but so many hours that it impacts too much of the base traffic, and Colonel Glenn is so heavily traveled.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, and I will say too, their construction entrance that they're going to have is on East Side Drive. So with that being on East Side Drive, I do feel that the construction traffic, where it's actually holding up traffic, will be a minimum on Grange or on Colonel Glenn Highway. So
And I'm looking at their recommendation number 4. It says that we've already, through yourselves, approved. A right-of-way permit must be obtained from the engineering department prior to any work being done on the apron. That also would not, or should it be something that I might want to make accommodating to the Colonel Glenn traffic?
yeah, so when that would come in for a right-of-way permit, that would be a condition that I would add to it as no lanes or all lanes shall be open from like 6 to 8 and then in the evening or something like that during rush hour. So that's something I can add during that when we get that permit
Well,
to come in.
to the city engineer, so being the first time on the committee instead of being in the audience, I do want to show some sensitivity to the massive amount of vehicles that travel Colonel Glenn at those hours, and at the same time not inhibit what was already put on the construction drawings for the 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I will need some help. I want to propose a 6th recommendation, similar to what you said. Melissa, could you have Nick tell you what he said that works around the Colonel Glenn impact?
So we could have it as all lanes shall be open between the hours of
6 a.m.
6 a.m. to,
6 p.m.
well, I don't know if I'd do it during peak hours. So I'd do 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m.
There you go. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, that's what we actually have another utility, just so you're aware of it too. We have a utility permit that's up there that I just approved last week, and that's the conditions we had on that all lanes should be open at those times too.
Okay,
So
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Nick. That's all I had.
Okay.
Jacob, anything?
Yeah, question for staff. So is if we were to approve this tonight, this is going back to city council?
No, this will be approved here this evening.
This will be
Yep.
approved here this evening?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do we have anybody here representing Project Kona?
Yes, John's in the back.
Good evening. I'm John Kopelchek at 3500 Pentagon Boulevard.
Hi. So, question about the 7th, is it 7th? 6th condition that we drafted. Is there, have you at this point in time had to take up any of the lanes on Colonel Glenn for construction?
Yeah, we haven't, and we've built quite a bit in the area without any requirements, I guess, on blocking traffic. I guess it's probably not an issue typically. As they noted, we will be accessing the property off of East Side Drive, which is a less heavily traveled road than Colonel Glenn, and actually where we'll be accessing the site will be south of Northrop Grumman's site as well. So, probably don't have a huge issue as we talk about limiting the windows of when we might not be able to block, although any restriction, obviously, who knows, something might come up as we're working on utilities closer to the right-of-way. We're closing off the access on Colonel Glenn. Do we have to get into the road at some point in time? So there are some limiting things that are presented by something that hasn't been an issue amongst our million-plus square feet of development in the area over the past 10 years. So that's my only comment on that.
Okay. Do you,
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that's a good question, but I'm thinking cranes. Even once they're on the site, obviously it's fine, but getting them to and from the site at certain hours of the day for when they're going to be mobilized to get, I'm thinking cranes access along and knowing how the traffic is.
Yeah, oversized.
You never know when a crane may want to show up for placement on the site.
Yeah. We do like to schedule that, though, but yeah, understood.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Anything else? Are you good, dude? Okay. Just one question for staff. So, what's your guys' preference? Would you prefer we just do a more general change if we're going to change it, and just say like something along the lines of the city staff, or the engineer or planning department, to work on any traffic or mitigate any traffic issues if they arise, something like that.
General would
instead
be
of
better.
trying to like
That would be,
put a
Yep.
hour condition on it.
yeah,
Okay.
I'd be good with that.
Yep, we'd be okay with that.
Okay. Would that be directed towards planning or city engineer or staff or okay, city
Engineering, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I would say, like, I don't know if we've reviewed Valvoline, which will go in Colonel Glenn too, and those will probably have the same sort of limiting factors. Like, if we were to put that condition on here, would we have to look at that from a standard perspective and look at Colonel Glenn entirely?
Are you saying are you setting a precedent here?
Yes.
I think you would be, but it's up to you. I think if you keep it general enough, I don't think it would limit development in any way. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be good with general, yeah.
Josh, do you have any ideas on how to word that?
The city engineer probably has a better idea of how it should be
Yep.
worded.
I just don't want to try to restrict anything to hours.
Like, just to be cognizant about peak hours, something generic.
There you go, magic words, Nick.
Okay. So, Josh, correct me if I need it. So, the way I'm thinking that might be worded is the applicant will work with the city for any potential lane closures along Colonel Glenn Highway.
To minimize disruption.
To minimize disruption to the traffic along Colonel Glenn Highway.
I'm good with
Is
that.
that
The essence is,
Applicant will work with, you want to be city
City
engineer?
city engineer? Yes.
On any potential lane closures?
On any potential lane closures,
to minimize disruption.
to minimize disruption,
And it's lane closures just of Colonel Glenn.
Yeah.
Colonel Glenn. Yeah.
To minimize disruption.
Yeah. Disruption. Yeah. On Colonel Glenn Highway.
Well, I think, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Did
just
you write it all down, Melissa?
before we have any motions on that, is the applicant okay with that?
Always go with the attorney.
What's his name? Applicants. John, are you good with that? Those conditions? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. Yep. Thank you. All right. With that, would either of you like to make a motion?
I motion to amend the resolutions, or I'm sorry, I'm recommending to add a condition to the resolution for PUD 06-1 minor modification to include
Condition number 6.
condition number 6 as stated.
Okay. And with that, do I
I'll
have a
second
second? All right. And we'll take the roll on that.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. With that, the motion passes, and we'll need now a motion to approve the PUD with the modified conditions.
Motion to approve PUD 06-1 minor modification project Kono with the modified conditions.
6 conditions.
6 conditions.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, and we'll take the roll once more.
Mr. Fountain,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes. With that, the motion passes. We are on to our last case of the night, or I guess it's a discussion item. We'll just hear from staff.
Good evening again. I finally get a chance to get up and do a presentation, so I'm happy about that. We had a phone call came in from, there's about 50 or 60 acres of land vacant on Indian Ripple Road that's currently classified in the land use plan as office. And the applicant called in about doing a assisted living, it's more independent living, but for 55 and up people. That doesn't fall, and so right now the property zone R1A, single family residential, that doesn't really fit in with the current zoning, and in order to do that kind of a project, they'd have to rezone. Now to rezone a property, it needs to kind of align with the land use plan. And so what they're requesting, and you've got the letter in your packet, is that Planning Commission consider amending the land use plan to allow for the 55 and up apartments or an assisted living, independent living facility to be constructed there. This is kind of an aerial of where I'm talking about. This is more, the outline in blue is kind of the area that, in general discussion. On the south side of it does front Indian Ripple, and there is some community commercial designation on that, but you can see to the north side is all office. You know, we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, especially away from the base, away from that Colonel Glen area, the market in office is really limited. You might get a doctor's office or a dentist office, a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot building, but to have a 50-acre office park in this location, for the foreseeable future, is going to be a challenge to get that to develop. So in the looking, okay, what would fit there? Single family obviously would fit there, but other than single family, this would be an opportune area for a transition from the single family to the north to the higher intense commercial along the corridor. And so what we're asking tonight, you don't have to make a decision on the land use amendment itself. It's just we're looking for direction from Planning Commission because there are expenses involved. We've done this in the past. The procedure is if Planning Commission even wants to further discuss the issue or further look into the issue and consider an amendment to the land use plan, we have to advertise that as a public hearing, send notifications to anybody within 500 feet, and give them the opportunity to give their input as well. If Planning Commission considers this, we can do that at the next meeting. We just wanted to get your thoughts on it. And to look at the overall process, what we'd be looking at here. A land use plan amendment would be, it's basically an ordinance at City Council, because to change the ordinance approved land use plan, you have to have an ordinance to amend it. So there would be 2 public hearings, one here at Planning Commission, one at City Council, so you'd be recommending to City Council. If that were to occur, then the applicant can come in to rezone the property again. And you saw that with the last project where the rezoning is Planning Commission making a recommendation, City Council approving or disapproving that, both public hearings. Depending on what that zoning would be, whether it be a straight zoning district, R1A, R2, R3, R4, or ROP1, anything like that. If it were straight zoning, then they would still have to go through the ASRA where you look at the site, the architecture, the landscaping, the lighting, and things like that. If it were a PUD, very similar, you would be looking at a site plan, which would be the architecture, the landscaping, the lighting, stormwater detention, all that. either of those two processes also is two public hearings. So before any construction would occur on this, there would be at least 6 opportunities for public input on the decision on the land use plan amendment, the decision on zoning, and the decision on any site plan. Now, again, we can look for, I'm just looking for your direction. We can give you options or whatever if we move forward, and give you a more in-depth analysis on this, but didn't want to go through that if that was a no-go with Planning Commission at this point. So really just looking for your feedback and whether you want us to move forward next month with the land use plan amendment.
Does staff have any initial, I mean, we don't know how many different units would be in this, but does staff have any initial hesitations? Like if we were at a rezoning meeting right now, again, not knowing how many dwelling units there would actually be, what are some of the inhibitors?
Well, we would probably look at, well, if this were rezoning for a assisted living or a 55 and up apartment, we would require a 50-foot buffer to the north. We would probably limit the density to similar to what you'd find in low density or medium density, just with the added caveat that you can go a little bit higher because senior 55 and up apartments have much less traffic than a traditional apartment would. And by far, the most traffic impact is on a single-family residential neighborhood. It's like 8 times more traffic than an apartment does, just because the families live there and they're doing all kinds of things. Where in an apartment or a multifamily, you have less trips. But we would look at that. We would really consider access points. Now, all these properties that are under one ownership, and they also own one of the single-family lots that are to the east that stretches all the way out to Grange Hall Road. So that would be an opportunity for a secondary access point, even if that were emergency access only. And then it obviously touches Indian Ripple and it touches Harbert Drive to the west as well. So the access points are there. The density, it's a heavily wooded lot, so there would be opportunity for good screening. That would be a consideration as well from the existing single-family residential. 55 and up in apartments are not notorious for loud music or loud operations that you might find at a traditional apartment. And even those, I mean, they're all subject to noise ordinances with the city. But from a living standpoint, the 55 and up crowd is usually not the wildest crowd.
Yeah. Should we be looking at the existing senior living facilities in that area? Because there's one right across the street. There's one half a mile down the road with one also right across the street from it. That's probably not something we should be looking at with this.
No, no, I get what you're saying. No, we really don't take the market into consideration. I mean, we're not here. I mean, the market, that's a private issue. But even if we were down the street at
Woodcroft.
It's the United Church Homes, Trinity, I believe it's called. That's got a small component of independent living, but it's mostly a skilled nursing facility. When you get down to the Patterson, or formerly known as Harbor Chase, that's more. It is independent living with. It's an assisted living. It's a larger building with on-site nurse, assistant care, whereas this would be more of a active living, active 55 and up community where it's apartments. It's just, and it has a little bit more activities and oriented towards that age group, but not a facility that you would find down the street in either direction.
This is more like the Lillian Drive that we just reviewed.
Yes, it would be more like a MODA. Okay. Or even if one of the one of the other condo units in the area were 55 and up only too, like cottages on County Line Road, it's 55 and up
So,
condos.
sorry, you guys probably have questions. If we were to, like, I'm looking at this, immediately right off the bat, I was thinking, like, one of the inhibitors would be remaining at the low-density residential, 3 dwelling units per acre. Like, if we come up with these inhibitors, are you able to send those back to the potential applicant and see if they're still even interested with continuing on in this process, or does this need to go to a public hearing?
Well, I mean, they would be I mean, they could, at this point, we're not setting anything. I mean, I would that would be something to look at at the next meeting. That's where I'll do more analysis. What would it take? Do we split this north side, do it low density, and then get medium density in the south side, or residential office? What does that entail? What are they looking for? Because, I mean, we're not going to, if they want something that's totally out of character with the neighborhood, then, you know, obviously that would have an effect on your decision, or at least effect on their decision, whether or not they want to proceed anyways. But really, land use plan amendments are unique. There's no real applicant. It's just, what is the city's vision for this area? So regardless of what a third party would want, it's really, what does the city envision for the area is what we're looking at. And right now, the market, the likelihood of a large-scale office development going back there is pretty low, whereas residential in that area is more likely, and a transitional residential to the commercial would be a decent fit in there.
Thank
So
you.
really, we're talking more philosophical at this
Right.
point rather than practical.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Randy, do you have this slide?
I don't know if I
Zoning
put
map?
it on the,
Zoning map?
I did not put it on.
Okay, then so I'm just concerned if you're looking to get our thoughts of making this into residentially zoned, whatever that might be, because that would be a future meeting, correct? If I remember
That would
your
be,
flow
yeah.
diagram?
Yeah, that would be quite
So somebody would come to us to request that it be put into R1A or whatever might
right.
be. So going with, in our packet, the zoning map, and having been there like Jacob and Jonathan have probably been, there's already the CPUD there next door. Are we, by favoring moving it to residential zoning, putting inhibitors or handcuffs on that plot already because of the CPUD right next door, which is storage areas and what have you? So we're in effect boxing them in to what they can do because of what's there already. You said it's a common owner for all these. Have they given you any indications of, well, even though we're CPUD right next door, yeah, residential would be fine, but even though they can only do this and this because of the industrial storage that sits there already?
What I'm envisioning is there's a mix. It's a residential office is a land use, and that where you can have medium density residential, and I think it's medium density residential office where you can have either or. So because the intent is for those to act as transition from residential to commercial.
But the existing CPUD that's right next door would not inhibit or prevent.
Well, that would be up to the
possibilities.
buyer. And if somebody comes in to rezone it, they know what's next door. So if they're requesting it, that's up to them. If we go from office strictly to residential office, it just opens more opportunities up for the land rather than singularity of an office at this point.
Okay.
Just to jump in there real quick. Correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but only the property owner or the registered agent of the property right can request rezoning. It's not like the cities would mandate it
From
to
a
be rezoned.
Correct. If we
So-
would need, well, we could, but we
Okay,
won't.
okay.
Won't, it's a long time. There hasn't been an instance since I've been here in 19 years that we have done a city-initiated zoning.
Okay. So it would be the property owner requesting it to be rezoned
Or somebody
anyway.
representing
Yeah.
the property owner.
Can you go to, if you don't have the zoning map, go to one of the other graphics? There we go, that'll work. So given the lower right-hand corner of that plot, would we be favoring a residential development for this, the one that we're talking about now, in blue? Would we in any way be inhibiting or preventing the owner of that lower right-hand corner from doing anything beneficial or productive with their property? Because they're basically now the zit at
Depending
the
on
end of it.
the site plan of the whatever would come forward with the rezoning. I mean, there would be potential requirements for buffers, if there was some residential in the south. But really, if you're talking apartment style development, the buffers are quite less than if it were single-family housing development, when you're separating residential versus commercial. We do require that 50-foot buffer if that were all single-family residential neighborhood. So I can see your point where, yeah, the person who owns that vacant commercial land now can
They're
only-
limited by what they could do.
they could still do stormwater detention on that area, and they could still do landscaping on the area, but they couldn't do parking lot or building. So a lot of the times when we do have a 50-foot buffer, that's where as long as the grading works that way, that's where you find your stormwater detentions.
Thank you. That's all I
Required
have,
anyway.
Mr. Chairman.
But really, tonight, I'm just seeing, is Planning Commission interested in me moving forward with and bringing forward an official land use plan amendment next month?
Just a quick question. So, when was the last time we updated the land use plan? I can't remember.
2020 is when it was approved, and we're working on this year, we've hired a third-party consultant to review our land use plan, our zoning code, and our property maintenance code, and that's going to be a comprehensive analysis over the next 16 months or so.
Okay. So I guess my question along those lines would be, is there an urgent need to do this separately, or can it be part of that? Comprehensive?
I mean, that's up to you guys. I mean, we had the request, and we said we'd bring the request forward. Whether you think that it can wait 16 months, or that we don't want to jump into anything that might countermand what the review is doing is up to you.
And my thoughts are to support what Randy said at the beginning. We're running out of developable land, and anything we can do to entice or encourage might be helpful, because they're looking at something usually a year or two into the future.
Yeah. No, I don't have any concerns. I just was, are we going to need to hold a public hearing if we're going to hold a public hearing 2 months later? For
Well,
the full.
I think
I just didn't know the timing.
the preliminary timeline for this land use plan, third-party land use plan, probably wouldn't be until November, December of this year when you guys would see a product.
Okay. So it'll be.
So
a while.
it's going to be
Okay.
a year. But a rezoning could be a year from now, too.
True. Okay. And then, I guess, just one point of clarification. That building's not included, right? That you have highlighted in the south?
It's under the ownership. I mean, we would probably keep that commercial because
Okay.
that's right along the road. I just kind of circled the area in general.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that would probably stay neighborhood community commercial just because it's a frontage.
Okay. And you did say your plan was to allow for both, right? If we were to change the land use plan?
Again, I haven't overly strategized on it just because I wanted to get some direction before I spend too much time contemplating.
Yeah.
But I would be thinking something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any concerns with that. So.
So you're looking for a motion?
No, I just seen,
Or just
I don't
thoughts?
need an official action or anything. I just wanted to get your guys' opinion. And I don't want to advertise and come back and stir up if it's already a no-go.
I'm supportive of it as long as it doesn't box in the surrounding area.
Yeah, and you're not
Of
voting right
property.
now to approve that. I mean, you, obviously, if you're supporting it now, you can obviously say no when it comes forward, if it comes forward next month. You're not boxing yourself or committing yourself in.
Yeah, sound good. Jake?
Thanks for input.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we are out of cases. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the March Planning Commission meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And we'll just do that by general consensus, obviously.
I agree.
With that, we are adjourned.